And I'll just move ahead. So since you already know about the initiative, the consortium, I will start with the few questions that I have for you. So, you know, um, and I think this initiative or this interview will also serve as a separate initiative outside of Glacier Nation that we, along with the chapter of Pakistan, the chapter of Karakoram ranges, we as a couple of students or enthusiasts are trying to run is called the Save the Third Pole initiative. So Save the Third Pole is something, in the mountains of Pakistan where a lot of fund goes in, but nothing, sort of comes back, like, as awareness. And I mean, it probably you might disagree, but, there are things that, on local level, there are not a lot of things, not a lot of people are aware around it. So I might use Save the Third Pole or the third pole in the conversation as well. So my first question is also like around that. So why do you think that, in recent times, the third pole has become sort of some sort of, attention or focal point for scientists, and compared to North and South Pole, of course, has always been a point of concern. But why do you think third pole is important and why it's part of the discussion?
Yeah, well, thanks, Rizer, for this question. Hmm. I would say that the third pole catches a lot of attention because of the population living there, which is significant, as we all know. We have more than 10 countries covering Himalayas plus Central Asia. I include Central Asia or the HMA, High Mountains Asia. So we talk about 2 to 3 billion people living or depending on these mountainous systems where the glacier, the snow, the permafrost are located. So I think the impacts are very rapidly visible. The impact of any impacts, actually, a good year in terms of snow or a bad year in terms of snow, we can always see it very in a straightforward way. So I think there was a global interest to look at that more precisely. If you multiply also, the number of sensors, like you said, whether they're on the ground or remotely sensing devices, there is more research to do in areas where, like 30 years ago, the access was more complicated, I would say. We also have more and more institutes, universities, and consortium, gathering and aggregating around these topics. But I really think the population is the reason why we focus on this region. When we have a flood, ice collapse, or snow avalanches, it's always striking in those regions, maybe more than some other mountainous regions, such as the Alps, I would say, because we don't talk about the same precipitation patterns, not the same elevation ranges, and that's why third pole is always, I would say, at the center. Yeah, there's still so much to do, but the initiatives are, like I said, multiplying, and this is great to see that. Remember, Rizer, we were in class many times in Khorog. We have the chance to work on a campus which is in the middle of the system. And whenever we have something to explain about cryosphere or natural hazards in mountains, we look at the window and say, geography explained, this is right there. There is no need for simulations, actually. And that's why I think the third pole is such a, valuable and interesting, system to look at.
Where was that? Just to explain where you were, was that
Yeah,
in
it,
Tajikistan?
yes, it's in south of Tajikistan, it's in Pamir,
Okay.
the
Okay.
the southern part of Tajikistan. So there is a
Okay.
campus there where he's there
Cool.
studied. Yeah,
I see. Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arno. And do you have anything to add, Carol, or ask?
No, I'm going to go off camera now, but maybe I'll just, because I'll be driving in a minute. This is super interesting. Keep going. The only question I have too is what I learned in Paris about, it's great to learn about. I mean, I'm very aware of the third pole, but Tajikistan's glaciers, that there's a lot of initiative from Tajikistan, like on an advocacy level, but there's also a lot of pollution. So do those two cancel each other out, or like, you know, is it enough work on the advocacy, but is there enough on the pollution, which also has a big impact on the glaciers and ecosystems? But I can save that till the end, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Lisa, you're muted. Do you want me to?
Yes.
No, you can say it
Yeah,
later. Sure, you can say it
yeah.
later, but
Arnaud can respond to that. Yeah. If you.
okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, the research on the glaciers and the glacier interval in Tajikistan is really focused on the mass balance. So that's a fact. We all know that. But I wouldn't say that the dimensions related to pollution is yet integrated to this research. We only have, I mean, if we talk about albedo, for example, if this is what you were referring to, Caval, the research is very recent. I mean, a year or two, I would say, on that. While we try to understand, of course, the changes in albedo, that's one, but B, where the dust come from in the snowpack, or from the dust that we find on the ice or in the snowpack, where does it come from? Is this a national, regional, international source of pollution? So the research is very, very fresh on that, and there will be some efforts to lead on this. We have massive industrial plants, such as a big aluminium one in Tajikistan, which is quite old, I would say. So there would be some adaptation work to do on that, but the investments are massive. However, we have other examples of concrete plans next to Dushanbe, for example, where the government did things, you know, to limit the pollution. They rebuilt a new concrete factory, which is supposed to decrease its emissions. So it's not necessarily towards the glaciers preservations, but there are some efforts. But the linkage between the albedo and the pollutions still requires a lot of research. And through this, we can invite PhD students, postdocs. There is so much to do and so much to cover.
Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the question, and I think response is very fitting as well. My next question is more on, you know, what you do and what your expertise in, like, you know, sort of permafrost and avalanches. So with the like, if permafrost, I mean, you know, what we understand is sort of melting silently underground, right? So what are some of the mitigation and adaptation techniques, and how do you see the local communities or their approaches change over the year as it starts to melt, and then, you know, it is something that happening underground and then something happening above the ground as well. So how avalanches and permafrost meltings, just these sort of you know, compounds the effect, and how do you see local communities sort of mitigating through that?
Yeah, we have 2 hours, but thank you. It's a good and tough question. Let me start with the snow avalanches, because they are much more obvious than the permafrost, though, for everybody, right? Even for communities living up there in the mountains. So we do see avalanches, of course, from one year to another. And we always try in our work to refer to the indigenous knowledge, where the avalanche occurred in the past, how big they were, you know, when was the last time we saw a certain caliber of an avalanche. And all of this is always tricky, because you have to deal with the social memory of hazards, right? In some cases, we ask some people, why do you install or build your house or your, you know, warehouse in a slope on the debris fan, which is under avalanches risk? And the answer is, yeah, but the last time we saw an avalanche was like more than 60 or 90 years ago. Right, that's good, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that the risk is zero. So I would say that there is a knowledge related to snow avalanches, if we only talk about snow avalanches, but we do try to quantify that with remote sensing and simulations as well, returning periods, and we created a model to map all the avalanches historically. I mean, the avalanches which occurred since the 90s using remote sensing, to understand, okay, where are they happening most of the time? and then we compared this data with some local authorities to see whether they agreed on this or not. But there were some, the point is that there are points of discussions between remotely sensed avalanches and the local knowledge, I would say, because again, avalanches are visible and their impacts are very destructive. So we always remember the avalanches. Um, but at the same time, it's interesting because when you have large events, such as the one we had in Khorog in Pamir in February 2023, I think you remember, more than 10 fatalities triggered by very, very large avalanches in the city center. So this avalanche is known actually. And the last time it happened was like more than 40 or 50 years ago. So we knew about these avalanches, but we forgot about its impact, and we decided to build on areas which are dangerous again. But when you talk about this event of 2023 in Khorog, there is a tendency to say that, okay, there is more and more snow avalanches than in the past. And this needs to be assessed very, very carefully. And this requires lots of data, which are hard to get and to create. And in the case of Khorog, in the data set that we have on the last 30 years, there is actually no positive trend of snow avalanches than in the past. So we don't have more or less or smaller or bigger avalanches than in the past. In that case, right? But severe events such as the one of 2023 revive, some souvenirs or some emotions maybe which mislead maybe the judgment. But this being said, on the other side of the river, in places such as Shiva Lake, if you remember, according to the data set that we produced, there is actually more avalanches than in the past. So whenever someone says, okay, we have more avalanches than in the past in the village, we always need to look at it carefully, because this can happen. This is possible. And you have to rely on the local knowledge again to look at these trends. So there are lots of things happening around the snow avalanches, but now when it comes to permafrost, since you ask, this is much more complex, and because, well, permafrost is associated, of course, with debris flows in the regions and other hazards, but they are frequently associated or attributed to gloves, which is not necessarily the case, right? Or landslides. But the debris flows can be simply triggered by the rapid melt of at least the active layer of permafrost. So when it comes to permafrost topics, the conversation becomes a little bit trickier, because as scientists, we don't have the knowledge of where it is located. I mean, let's be honest, in Pamir, for example, we don't know yet precisely how deep or how wide the permafrost is, where the active layer starts and stops. And there are ongoing research, but again, it's early stage, so we don't have precise answers. And at the same time, when you talk to locals, if you talk about water resources, it's like glacier, rain, or snow and rain, which comes. But permafrost can have a very, very small contribution to the water cycle in the region, and this is what we try to look at. We know it's very small, but with such rapid changes in terms of temperature patterns, we have to look at it, because the active layers of permafrost are meant with this to melt. And what does it mean for the river? Will the discharge grow? Yes, no. By how much and at what time during the year? These are critical questions. Once the glacier, and if they disappear, what about the permafrost at the same time? So we look at that, but I would say that the knowledge from every community is lower, of course, is smaller on permafrost than avalanches, because again, avalanches are striking for everybody. That's a very honest response.
Yeah. I think, thank you so much. I think, and it leads naturally to the next question I was going to ask, which is more towards you, that it's good that you mentioned that how we have to integrate the local knowledge and indigenous knowledge. And then what do you think, for example, especially the communities I would be targeting would be the Pamir community or people of the Karakoram ranges, let's say, right? How do you think they need how and what they need to change in their traditional lifestyles, let's say, and like, what in your opinion? I mean, of course it's very hard to sort of, because living there for not for a very long time, you cannot say, but then, you probably have some pointers, some lifestyle changes that you've sensed or that you've observed over the years that needs changing, or then what are some of the indigenous knowledge that you think if what you've learned, or you saw that these are some of the activities they were used to do it previously, but then they could be revived for more sustainable approaches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now I think we talk about adaptation. I mean, on a local scale, because if we talk about preservation, it's much wider than Pamir or Karakoram or Ladakh, for example. It's a global effort. But in terms of adaptation from the local communities, there are many things that were done, that should be done also in the future. Well, for example, if we, I will change the topic from snow avalanches, but on snow avalanches, harvesting, that's a good, it's a good way to, to use these millions of cubic meters of, compacted water, snow, sorry, for irrigation purposes. And these are things, if in areas where we have more and more avalanches, which are rare, but they happen, maybe this should become more like of a practice, right? Harvesting the snow avalanches deposits. But in any case, the farmers will have, in general, to adapt their irrigation calendars, the practices as well, but the practices means lots of investments again. There is always this debate, everybody should go for drip irrigation instead of furrow, but this should be really discussed because first off, not everybody can afford a drip irrigation system. And second, it might in some cases the furrow irrigation systems are more sustainable than drip, because you use the water that you get, and the water that you save, you don't use it. But anyway, long story short, so the water pattern, as we all know, with predictions for the coming, well, 20, 30, and 100 years, actually show that in snow and glacier-fed basins will most likely have more water until the 60s, and then we'll have the decrease once the ice will have almost completely melted. And this has consequences for agriculture, irrigation, of course, but the energy sector as well. The water might not come exactly at the same time that it used to. We always have this shift from May to April in terms of peak, of snow melt peak. This might change. We also have in some cases the replacement from snow to rain because of increasing temperature. So again, the retention in the soil is not the same, the runoff is not the same, the timing is not the same, and it means that in the end, the peak might come earlier during the year. So the farmers may have to adapt to new irrigation calendars, and this we all know that, but we have to disseminate this information, and we have to, more than disseminate, we have to, I think, demonstrate what to do with new varieties of wheat or potatoes in mountainous areas. And this is what some of our colleagues are trying to do at UCA and more in Tajikistan and Central Asia in general. What if we start to irrigate from April instead of May? Can we do that? Do we obtain the same yields? And this is very important, and this must be done in collaboration with the local communities, of course. Because sometimes they have needs and practices that they know much better than the scientists themselves. So I would say that adaptation of the agricultural pattern is an important one, with sustainable practices such as harvesting the snow avalanches. And I don't think we should generalize, the use of technology, right, to save the agriculture or the energy sector of these areas. They are sustainable, non-energy consumptive techniques that can be used again to keep cultivating at these high elevations and keep maintaining the food security. So it's a very vast question with a vast answer, but I would say that implementing things, demonstrating with local communities is the best. Let's select a potato tube. We cultivate it together with the farmers in the village and we see what it gets.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you so much. I mean, you are explaining things from a very smartly, and I think the discussion can go on for hours, as you said. We only have few minutes, but yeah, I now that you good that you mentioned that the dissemination is important and the showing part is important. So how do you think an interdisciplinary team, or then what kind of people do we need, through this consortium, or in generally a lot of multitude of consortiums are working simultaneously, but then what and how do you see the role of, for example, media? How do you see the role of social scientists, and how do you see other discipline people can play in this adaptation and mitigation?
Yeah. Well, I think you know better because you already have this consortium, and which is very complete, much more than our team. The team where I work, we are like they are scientists, but we would need photographers, artists, and some storytelling to improve the dissemination. So, yeah, I mean, whenever we design a project, what we must do from scratch, instead of waking up at the 11th hour, right, during the project, is to include those people, not necessarily scientists, but again, people who are good in storytelling. And I'm trying to be very general in my answer, but time is the key, I would say, rather than tools or social medias or new websites. Time. If we all accept that at the end of or during or towards the end of the project, let's say once we have the scientific results, to spend time with the local communities and say, okay, look, this is what we found. The glacier will disappear by that year. The discharge will be this or that. We suggest, and we should try now to gather this new, again, potato tube. And I think this cannot be done solely by scientists, because maybe we're not the best at disseminating this, but doing these focus groups uh, would be, we can't really do that in Pamir these days, unfortunately, but there are other regions in Central Asia where we can, but that would be more efficient. Of course, you invite the press. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't, or you share something on social medias, and it attracts more or less attention. But I think the more sustainable way is to keep talking to the people from scratch, not only the head of the village, but sitting together and accepting to spare time, because I don't think it's very sustainable to go on a glacier, do the expedition, and leave right away after, right? We need to take time and accept, even if sometimes it's not that productive in terms of result, but to build a trust between the scientists and the people who use the water, actually. That's the hardest to do. Expeditions are technical, logistically it's complicated always, there are risks, but I would say it's much easier than coming back and say, to the energy operator, or let's say the irrigation association of, I don't know, Shohdara, this is what we found, and that's what's coming next in the future. This requires lots of work, and not only scientists, but actually I should reverse the question, because we should learn from you and from your consortium, actually, because I do believe that you have artists, photographers, journalists, and not only researchers. So I hope we can
Yeah.
go towards that direction.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of a team of, where people from all discipline come together. And I think which is beautiful and really nice about the team consortium here is that everyone comes from a very different background. And then I think mostly are people who can help communicate with the community. Like, it's as you said, is the hardest part. For example, the result, okay, this would be the discharge, and then by this year you don't have glacier, that
Then
you can
what?
say, but
Yeah.
then yeah, but then what, and how you translate it into policy, or how you translate it into something more important for the community is always difficult. And thank you so much. And I think I have just three more questions, and I think one is, for example, once you have these conflicts, water, of course, is expected to bring a lot of conflicts within communities, and intra communities, inter communities. So, do you think that a lot of migration patterns would be observed from the places of where you have a lot of glaciers or where you have a lot of retreat and where you see or observe high climate changes? And are you expecting or would you expect the conflicts to emerge as well? For example, as you said, fight over water, fight over land, or these kind of things when the things become scarce.
Yeah, that's also a tough one. I think in if we talk about Central HMA, sorry, again the third pole, uh, it's in the mountains. It will not be as striking as in lower lands. We already have many examples in lowlands, arid lowlands in the world, like in Algeria, Egypt, Sudan,
Sub-Saharan Africa, let's say.
Sub-Sahara, RLC as well, and all the conflicts between Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. So this is one thing that is already happening and that will probably increase over time. But I think if we forget about they're important, but if we put the international water boundaries issues, I think we should temper a little bit and be perhaps a bit more optimistic. I mean, between the communities themselves, because they keep evolving in the same watershed, and they share water still, but the glaciers will probably not disappear completely, and some parts of the resources might be replaced by more rainfalls with all the challenges which come with it, right? Different timing, different proportions, but still there will be water in the rivers and we'll have a snowfall as well. So I don't think there will be a community conflict because they know each other and they will have time to see the changes. And if we do our work together properly, they will have time to adapt. So I would be, yeah, again, tempered in this regard. Uh, but when it comes back to international boundaries, well, you have the Tepa, sorry, the canal in Afghanistan, which raises lots of questions. A new canal which will take approximately 10% of the discharge of Amu Darya, sorry, uh, with uncertainties in the future in terms of discharge, that's going to create lots of problems. But in the mountains, I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure. I would be quite careful with this.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's very hard to generalize because I think over the years, people have found ways to survive and, sort of uh, just live with the realities. So I think they will again find their ways. And what I personally have seen, people in mountains or people in the high mountains have good cohesion within one another with each other. So I think rather than conflict, or even if there are conflict, they would be short-lived, and then again they would
Exactly.
get back to that. I have uh, two last questions, and my penultimate question is about Karakoram anomaly. So I think there has been discussions about Karakoram anomaly, and then what do you think, if this actually exists, and then what would be the repercussions of, or what would be the consequences of such an anomaly?
Yeah, it's a big topic. So I guess, well, in brief, the Pamir Karakoram anomaly was published as a term to explain the relatively healthy levels of glaciers of Pamir and Karakoram, of course, due to high elevation, remoteness from warm air masses coming from Atlantic and Indian Ocean. So for these reasons, in brief, the glaciers were relatively well preserved. This was the case until recently, and these are things we taught also in the university up to like 5, 6, 7 years ago. But when you look at the glacier mass balance of the recent years, well, I think we can revise the anomaly. All the mass balances are negative, right? Uh, I mean, in the region, I'm talking only about this region in particular. And after these papers on the anomaly, we had like 3, 4 consecutive years of negative mass balance. So, and even if you don't look at the mass balances themselves, you just look at the temperature of high mountains, which are in summer, especially this time on Central Asia, extremely high. In Tajikistan, we had 3 consecutive weeks last year above average by far, and this year doesn't seem to be any different. So I would say that this Pamir-Coram anomaly must be taught at university, because these are things that can happen, but these anomalies can be overcame by very high temperatures due to warming climates in the world. So I don't know how it should be taught at university anymore, but this should be revised.
Yeah, I think it's important because with these concepts, I think, uh, who is observing the changes might know, but then, once thing get into the media or through social media, they stick there, in the internet, it stays there, and then people, like, always go back to referring as Karakoram anomaly, and then they don't know what has changed and how much it has changed and what would be the consequences. So I think it's important, as you rightly mentioned, that, the revision is really important, because things are not the same as we had 10 years ago, and things need revision, not only in terms of discussing anomaly, but also the way we used to teach things about glaciers and climates.
It was kind of an island, I would say, this anomaly, because well, everywhere the rates of ice melting are, very rapid, but in Pamir it was a bit slower than other places. Uh, s- so it's always a bit surprising that this anomaly was not that, as you said, well known in the social media, because it was actually some good news, I would say, which did not last at least until the recent years. So that's, I think, precisely why this should be taught at the university or outside of universities. Like this is possible, or this was possible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I will leave you with two more questions, like two questions, very complementary. In your opinion, or what you've studied, what are some of the recent state-of-the-art adaptation and mitigation approaches to these challenges, and what do you think how they can be adapted, into our third pole or into these more vulnerable societies, which do not have largely, opportunities to do that? And then any lasting messages or remarks from your side?
Yeah. Recently, well, I said I don't think the technology will save us, but you understand where I'm going. We have multiplications of solar panels in Eastern Pamir, let's say, for example, which, in my opinion, if it's done properly with the right tools, is completely efficient and makes sense. Again, we have lots of uncertainties given the water resources in the future, so let's adapt from now and use different sources of energy. That's one thing I would say, which is positive on big scale, but also on the household levels. That's very good. I've seen also, but we don't have figures on that, but household holders, who adapt their crop choices also. For example, we cannot do anymore this variety of wheat, so we go for this one, and we keep trying. And some people do it by themselves without being taught by any botanist or agronomist. So this is pretty good. But these are very localized examples only. So I can't say it's a general thing. So these are the things. And well, the impacts of the adaptations are still not very visible, I should say, because it barely starts during this decade, right? We have, for example, requests from government, like to give them modules or courses on how to adapt agriculture, energy, or biodiversity or transportation to climate change. So we somehow only start the discussion, but it's the same in Western, the same in Austria, the same in France. The conversations are, I would say, barely existing on these high levels, I would say. So it's hard to find generalized impacts from a policy in the third pole, I would say. But these micro examples of these two, for example, new crop choices and solar panels, I would say are good demonstrations of adaptation. What we must be very, very careful with is wrong adaptations, I would say, because I've seen that only at discussions level, for example, but when we present the coming discharge of big rivers such as Sierra and Amu Darya, and we say, look, there will be a peak in the 60s, like I said, of discharge, and then it will decrease towards the end of the century. Well, some people, stakeholders, interpret that as opportunity to build more dams or hill lakes. So, which is not the right thing to do given what comes after. And again, any retention of water is always a source of, yes, water resources, but also of conflicts and biodiversity challenges. So we always must be very careful in how we frame it. We'll have more water. Let's not get too excited about it. So we need to think twice about that. So yeah, that's how I could answer your question.
Yes, and any last remarks before I stop recording?
Well, well, again, thank you, Khizer, for this. I think you have a great consortium, and we should take example on what you do. But I would say, and I think you're the wrong person to to hear that because you already know and do these things. But knowing the country, knowing the people you work with is very, very important. It's very important to, like I said, stop, take time to share the knowledge, and most importantly to interpret. Again, a mass balance, 5 years, 5 consecutive years negative mass balance means this for energy, or that. We must not stop to the mass balance results only. That, to me,
Yeah,
that's the take-home message, because we always like at the university to look at upstream to downstream. It's not upstream only.
yeah,
It's a whole system, and it's massive.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
thank you.
taking the time, and I think I thank you from on behalf of the consortium and also from our own initiative of Save the Third Pole.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Khizer. Good to see you, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think we will keep in touch for sure. I'll just stop recording.
Yeah.
Uh,